I am Eileen, 67 years old. My world shattered when my daughter Amanda called to tell me I would not be attending my own grandson Jason's wedding. The boy I raised while she built her career, who called me Grams, since he could speak. I maintained composure and simply said, I understand. But as I hung up the phone, tears streamed down my face. Something felt terribly wrong about this sudden exclusion from one of the most important days in my grandson's life. If you are watching this from somewhere with family, you hit that like button and subscribe to join me as I navigate this heartbreaking situation. The memories flooded my mind as I sat in my living room that day, still reeling from Amanda's call. Jason and I always had a special bond, one that began when he was just a tiny baby. Amanda had been so focused on climbing the corporate ladder at her law firm that I became Jason's second mother in many ways. I remember those precious early mornings when I would drive to their house while it was still dark, just so Amanda could make her early meetings. Jason would be half asleep, his little hand clutching his favorite blue blanket as I carried him to my car. By the time we reached my house, the sun would be rising, and we would watch it together from my kitchen window while I made his breakfast. "Grams, the sun is waking up just like me," he would say, his eyes still heavy with sleep. As Jason grew older, our bond only deepened. I taught him how to cook when he was just tall enough to reach the counter with his step stool. We started with pancakes, his favorite breakfast. I can still picture his determined little face as he concentrated on flipping them just right, his tongue sticking out slightly from the corner of his mouth. "Look, Grams, this one is perfect," he would exclaim, even when the pancake was oddly shaped or slightly burned. I always agreed they were indeed perfect. Weekends were our special time. While Amanda caught up on work or spent time with friends, Jason and I would go on adventures. I taught him to fish at the lake near my house when he was 7. He was so proud when he caught his first fish, a small sunfish, that we carefully returned to the water. "Can we do this every weekend, Grams?" he had asked, his eyes shining with excitement. "As long as you want to, my sweet boy," I had answered. And for many years we did. As a teenager, Jason still preferred spending time with me over hanging out with friends sometimes, which I considered a miracle given how teenagers typically behave. We would watch old movies together, go hiking, or just sit and talk about his dreams for the future. My husband Walter had passed away when Jason was only 5, but I made sure to share stories about his grandfather. Jason loved hearing about Walter's adventures as a young man, his work as an architect, and how we had fallen in love. I wanted Jason to feel connected to his heritage, to understand where he came from. When it came time for Jason to attend college, I was thrilled to be able to help financially. Walter had left us quite comfortable, and I had always been good with investments. I paid for Jason's tuition at Princeton, where he studied business with a focus on sustainable development. I was so proud of his passion for creating environmentally responsible businesses. After graduation, when Jason wanted to start his own consulting firm, focused on helping companies reduce their carbon footprint, I provided the seed money. I believed in his vision completely, and watching his business grow successful over the past few years has been one of my greatest joys. Beyond the financial support, I established a substantial trust fund for Jason and my other grandchildren. Walter and I had always believed in providing a foundation for the next generations, while encouraging them to build their own lives. The trust was structured to help with major life events, education, and business ventures. Jason's wedding would naturally be an occasion where the trust could be utilized, something Amanda was well aware of. My relationship with Amanda had always been more complicated than my relationship with Jason. After my daughter finished law school and began her career, she seemed to view me differently. There was a tension between us that I could never quite identify the source of. Perhaps it was simple mother-daughter friction, or maybe it was something deeper. Despite the tension, we maintained a polite relationship. I never interfered with her parenting decisions, even when I disagreed with them. I was simply grateful for the time I got to spend with Jason. Amanda seemed content with the arrangement too, as it allowed her to focus on her career without worrying about childcare. After Walter died, I threw myself into managing our investments and becoming involved in community service. I joined the board of our local hospital and started a scholarship fund for underprivileged children. Staying busy helped ease the pain of losing Walter, and giving back to the community gave me purpose. Life settled into a comfortable routine over the years. I had my friends, my charitable work, and most importantly, my family. Jason had grown into a fine young man, and when he introduced me to Lily 2 years ago, I knew she was special. She had a kind heart, a brilliant mind, and she clearly adored my grandson. I was delighted when they announced their engagement last Christmas, which is why Amanda's phone call about the wedding felt like a slap across the face. How could I possibly not be invited to the wedding of my own grandson? The grandson I had helped raise. It simply did not make sense. That Thursday morning had started like any other. I woke up early, made myself a cup of tea, and sat on my porch watching the birds at the feeder. It was a ritual that brought me peace, a moment of quiet before the day began. The spring air was crisp, and the cherry tree in my front yard was in full bloom, its pink blossoms dancing in the gentle breeze. I was planning my day, mentally going through my to-do list, when my phone rang. Seeing Amanda's name on the screen, I smiled. Perhaps she wanted to discuss wedding plans or needed advice on what to wear as mother of the groom. "Good morning, Amanda," I answered cheerfully. "Mother," she replied, her tone oddly formal. "I need to tell you something about Jason's wedding." Something in her voice immediately set off alarm bells in my mind. "Is everything all right? Did they change the date?" "No, the date is the same," she said, her voice cold and distant. "But there has been a decision made about the guest list." "Oh," I responded, suddenly feeling a knot forming in my stomach. "You will not be attending the wedding," Amanda stated flatly, as if she were discussing something as mundane as a change in dinner plans. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. "I am sorry, what did you say?" "You will not be attending Jason's wedding," she repeated, her voice even more detached. "Lily's family has made it clear they do not want too many elderly relatives at the wedding. They want to keep it young and lively. It is their decision, and we are respecting it." I felt as if all the air had been sucked from my lungs. "But I am not just any elderly relative, Amanda. I am Jason's grandmother. I helped raise him." "Mother, this is not just coming from Lily's family," Amanda continued. "Everyone has agreed this is for the best. The venue is limited in space and cuts had to be made." "Everyone, including Jason?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause before Amanda answered. "Yes, everyone. Jason understands this is what is best for his wedding day." I sat there, stunned into silence. The birds continued to chirp happily at the feeder, oblivious to the fact that my world was crumbling around me. "Mother, are you still there?" Amanda's voice broke through my shock. "Yes," I managed to say. "I understand." Those 2 words took every ounce of strength I possessed. What I wanted to say was how deeply hurt I was, how confused and betrayed I felt. But years of maintaining my composure in difficult situations had taught me to keep my emotions in check. "Good. I am glad you understand," Amanda said, sounding relieved that I was not putting up a fight. "I need to go now. I have a meeting in 10 minutes. The call ended, and I sat motionless on my porch, the phone still clutched in my hand. Tears welled up in my eyes and spilled down my cheeks. How could Jason agree to this? The boy who had spent countless weekends fishing with me, who had cried on my shoulder when his first girlfriend broke his heart, who had called me first when he got accepted to college. It seemed impossible. With shaking hands, I called Jason's number. The call went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking him to call me back when he had a moment. I tried to keep my voice steady, not wanting to sound accusatory or upset. An hour later, my phone dinged with a text message from Jason. "Sorry, Gram's super busy with wedding stuff. Talk soon." That was it. No explanation, no reassurance, nothing to indicate that he was upset about me not attending his wedding. I stared at the message, reading it over and over, looking for some hidden meaning, some sign that this was all a misunderstanding. Next, I tried calling Thomas, my son-in-law. Perhaps he could shed some light on this situation. But like Jason, he was brief and evasive. Amanda already explained the situation, Eileen, he said. It is a decision that has been made by everyone involved. We hope you can respect that. After hanging up with Thomas, I wandered through my house in a daze. In the living room, my eyes fell on a framed photograph of Jason and me at his college graduation. He had his arm around my shoulders, and we were both beaming at the camera. I picked up the frame, my fingers tracing his smiling face. "What happened, Jason?" I whispered to the photograph. "What changed?" The house felt suddenly large and empty. The silence was deafening. For the first time since Walter died, I felt truly alone. The pain of being excluded from such an important family event was almost physical, a heavy weight pressing on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I tried to rationalize it. Perhaps Lily's family really did have some strange aversion to older guests. Perhaps the venue truly was limited in space. But no explanation could soothe the hurt of being told I was not welcome at my own grandson's wedding. As the day wore on, my sadness began to mix with confusion and suspicion. Something about this situation did not add up. The explanation was too flimsy, too convenient. And the sudden unified front from Amanda Thomas and even Jason seemed orchestrated somehow. I had always prided myself on my intuition, on my ability to sense when something was not quite right. And every instinct I had was telling me there was more to this story than I was being told. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying Amanda's cold voice delivering the news, Jason's dismissive text message, Thomas's rehearsed response. By morning, my hurt had hardened into resolve. I would get to the bottom of this one way or another. The truth began to unravel in the most unexpected way. 3 days after Amanda's devastating call, I was having tea with my sister Patricia at her house. We had always been close, especially after Walter passed away, and she was one of the few people I had told about the wedding situation. "I still cannot believe they would exclude you like this," Patricia said, shaking her head in disbelief. "It makes absolutely no sense." "I know," I sighed. "I keep trying to understand it, but none of the explanations add up." Patricia excused herself to take a phone call in the kitchen. As I sat in her living room, I could hear her voice rising in what sounded like an argument. Normally, I would never eavesdrop, but when I heard my name mentioned, I found myself moving closer to the doorway. "Amanda, you cannot keep this from Eileen forever," Patricia was saying, her voice tense. "She is going to find out sooner or later, and it will be so much worse if she discovers the truth on her own." There was a pause as Patricia listened to whatever Amanda was saying on the other end of the line. "No, I have not told her anything," Patricia continued. "But this plan of yours is cruel, Amanda. Your mother deserves better than this." Another pause, longer this time. "Fine, it is your decision. But mark my words, this will backfire on all of you." When Patricia returned to the living room, her face was flushed with anger. I pretended I had not heard anything, but inside my mind was racing. What was Amanda hiding from me? What was this plan that Patricia thought was so cruel? The next piece of the puzzle fell into place when I received a call from Sophia, the mother of Jason's fiancée, Lily. We had met several times since the engagement and had gotten along well. I was surprised to hear from her given the circumstances. "Eileen, I wanted to check in on you," Sophia said warmly. "Lily and I were just finalizing the seating chart for the rehearsal dinner, and I realized we did not have your dietary preferences." I was momentarily speechless. I will not be attending the wedding or any of the related events," I finally managed to say. There was a confused silence on the other end. "What do you mean? Of course you will be at the wedding. Jason adores you. He was just telling Lily yesterday how excited he is for you to see their first dance." My heart began to pound in my chest. "Sophia, Amanda told me that your family requested that elderly relatives not attend to keep the wedding young and lively." "What?" Sophia exclaimed, clearly shocked. "That is absolutely not true. We would never make such a request. In fact, my own mother, who is 83, is not only attending but is one of our most honored guests." The pieces were starting to come together, but I still could not understand the motive behind such a lie. Why would Amanda go to such lengths to keep me from attending Jason's wedding? The final revelation came in the form of a misdirected text message. Thomas, who was not particularly tech-savvy, accidentally sent me a message that was clearly intended for Amanda. Just spoke with the financial advisor. Everything is in place for accessing Eileen's trust after the wedding. As long as she stays in the dark until then, we should be able to move forward with the house purchase. I stared at the message in disbelief. They were planning to use my trust fund, the one I had set up for Jason's future, to buy themselves a house, and they needed me in the dark until after the wedding. With a sick feeling in my stomach, I began to investigate further. I called my attorney, who confirmed that Amanda and Thomas had been inquiring about the conditions of the trust fund I had established for Jason. Specifically, they had been asking about whether the funds could be accessed for purposes other than what I had originally intended, such as a down payment on a vacation property. Next, I reached out to a mutual friend who worked at Jason's company. Through careful questioning, I discovered that Jason had been under immense pressure from his parents to go along with their plan. They had convinced him that I would never know the difference, and that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to secure a beautiful vacation home in the Hamptons. The final confirmation came when I managed to access Amanda's email on a shared family computer during a rare visit to their home. There, in black and white, was a detailed plan for using my trust fund to finance not just an extravagant wedding far beyond what I would have approved, but also a luxury honeymoon and the down payment on a vacation home that would primarily be used by Amanda and Thomas, not Jason and Lily. The email exchanges also revealed that they had been planning to sell my beloved lake house, a property that had been in Walter's family for generations, and that I had always intended to pass down to Jason. They had already contacted a real estate agent and were discussing listing prices, all without my knowledge or consent. As I pieced together the full scope of their deception, I felt as if the ground beneath my feet had disappeared. The people I loved most in the world, the family I had sacrificed for and supported unconditionally, had been plotting behind my back to take advantage of my generosity. The trust fund had been set up with the best of intentions to provide for Jason's future and to help him establish himself in life. Instead, it had become a target for greed and deception. The realization was devastating, but it also awakened a resolve in me that I had not felt in years. This was not just about a wedding invitation anymore. This was about standing up for myself and protecting what was rightfully mine to give or withhold. With a clarity of purpose that cut through my hurt and confusion, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. The moment everything changed was etched into my memory with painful clarity. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I had gone to Amanda's house to pick up some old photo albums I had loaned her. She was not home, but Thomas had said I could stop by and collect them while he worked in his home office. As I gathered the albums from the living room bookshelf, I noticed Amanda's laptop open on the coffee table. Normally, I would never invade someone's privacy by looking at their personal computer, but a document was open on the screen titled Wedding Budget Final. My name caught my eye in one of the line items. Against my better judgment, I sat down and began to scroll through the document. What I saw made my blood run cold. The wedding. Amanda and Thomas were planning for Jason and Lily was extraordinarily lavish, with costs far exceeding what would be reasonable even for a generous celebration. There were line items for exotic flower arrangements flown in from South America, a 10-piece orchestra custom-made crystal glassware for each guest to take home, and a 5-day honeymoon at a private island resort. But what truly stunned me was the source of funding listed at the top of the document: Eileen's trust with contingency planning if access is restricted. With shaking hands, I clicked on another open tab in the browser. It was an email exchange between Amanda and Thomas discussing my trust fund and how to ensure they could access it without my interference. "Mom will never need to know the full amount we are taking," Amanda had written. "Once we have access, we can move forward with the house plans too. The realtor says we need to act fast if we want that beachfront property," Thomas had replied. Just make sure she does not show up at the wedding. She is sharp, and she will notice how extravagant everything is. The story about Lily's family not wanting elderly guests was a stroke of genius. I felt physically ill as I continued reading. They had been planning this for months, deliberately keeping me away from wedding planning meetings and discussions about finances. They had even coached Jason on what to say to me, feeding him lines about wanting a small, intimate ceremony, when in reality they were planning an event that would be featured in luxury wedding magazines. The most painful discovery came when I found a text conversation that had been synced to Amanda's laptop. Jason had initially protested the plan to exclude me. "Grams has always been there for me," he had written. "It feels wrong to keep her away from my wedding." Amanda's response was cold and manipulative. "Do you want Lily to have her dream wedding or not? Grams had her time. This is about your future now. Besides, she will never know how much we spent. What she does not know will not hurt her." I sat there staring at the screen as tears streamed down my face. The betrayal was complete. My daughter had manipulated my grandson, poisoned him against me, all for financial gain. The trust fund I had established out of love had become a source of greed and deception. In that moment of painful clarity, something hardened inside me. The hurt was still there, a deep ache in my chest, but it was joined by a steely resolve. I would not be a victim in this scenario. I would not allow my love and generosity to be exploited. I closed the laptop, carefully placed it exactly as I had found it, and collected my photo albums. Thomas was still in his office, oblivious to my discovery. I called out a polite goodbye to him as I left, keeping my voice steady, despite the turmoil inside me. As soon as I got home, I called Margaret, my attorney of 30 years, and one of my closest friends. Her response was immediate and supportive. "Come to my office first thing tomorrow," she said firmly. "We will review the trust documentation and your options. Eileen, I am so sorry they have done this to you." Next, I called Robert, my financial advisor. He was equally appalled when I explained the situation. "We can freeze the trust temporarily," he assured me. "No funds can be accessed without your explicit approval. We will need to act quickly, but it can be done." That night I barely slept. My mind kept replaying all the conversations, all the evasive answers and strange behaviors that now made perfect sense. The hurt was overwhelming, but I forced myself to channel it into action rather than despair. By morning I had made my decision. I would not destroy the trust entirely, as it had been created out of love for Jason and his future. But I would change the conditions, ensuring that any funds could only be accessed with my explicit approval, and only for the purposes I had originally intended. In Margaret's office, we reviewed the trust documentation carefully. As I had established the trust and maintained control as the trustee, I had the legal right to modify certain conditions. By noon, the paperwork was complete. The trust was effectively frozen pending my approval for any withdrawals. As I signed the final document, Margaret looked at me with concern in her eyes. "Are you prepared for the fallout from this? Eileen, Amanda will be furious." I met her gaze steadily. "I am not doing this out of spite, Margaret. I am doing it to protect what I worked for, what Walter and I built together. The money in that trust is meant to support Jason's future, not to fund a show of extravagance or to buy a vacation home for Amanda and Thomas." Margaret nodded. "You are doing the right thing, but be prepared, this will not be easy." She was right. It was not easy, but it was necessary. As I left her office, I felt a strange mix of sadness and strength. The family dynamics I had taken for granted had been revealed as fragile and corrupted by greed. But in standing up for myself, I had reclaimed something important, a sense of self-respect that I had not even realized I was in danger of losing. The storm was coming, I knew that. Amanda would not take this lying down. But for the first time since that devastating phone call about the wedding, I felt ready to face whatever came next. I did not have to wait long for the repercussions of my decision to manifest. Less than 2 hours after leaving Margaret's office, my phone rang. Amanda's name flashed on the screen, and I took a deep breath before answering. "Hello, Amanda," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Mother, what have you done? She demanded, her voice shrill with panic. The wedding vendors are calling, saying their deposits are being held up. The trust fund access has been frozen. I sat down in my favorite armchair, preparing myself for the confrontation. Yes, I have temporarily restricted access to the trust fund pending my review and approval of how the money is being spent. There was a moment of stunned silence before Amanda exploded. You cannot do that. That money is for Jason's wedding. We have contracts signed, deposits paid. The trust was established to help Jason with major life events. Yes, I replied calmly. But it was never intended to fund an extravagant spectacle or to purchase vacation properties in the Hamptons. Another silence, this one longer and heavier. When Amanda spoke again, her voice was low and dangerous. What are you talking about? How do you know about the house? I know everything, Amanda. I said, my voice finally betraying some of the hurt I felt. I know about the elaborate wedding plans, the honeymoon on a private island, the beachfront property. I know you lied about Lily's family not wanting elderly guests. I know you manipulated Jason into going along with excluding me from his wedding. You snooped through my things. Amanda's voice rose again in indignation. No, Amanda. The truth has a way of revealing itself. You were careless, and your deception unraveled on its own. This is unacceptable, Amanda sputtered. You are ruining everything out of spite because you felt left out. This is not about feeling left out, I corrected her firmly. This is about honesty, respect, and using the trust as it was intended. If you had come to me openly discussed what you wanted to do, we might have found a compromise. Instead, you chose deception and manipulation. You are being selfish and controlling, Amanda accused. This is Jason's wedding, his future. Is it? I asked quietly. Or is it your chance to throw a lavish party and secure a vacation home? Be honest, Amanda, at least with yourself, if not with me. The conversation deteriorated from there, with Amanda cycling through anger accusations, and finally, when she realized I would not back down, desperate bargaining. What do you want, Mother? She finally asked, her voice defeated. What will it take to release the funds? I want the truth acknowledged, I replied. I want an apology for the deception, and I want to attend my grandson's wedding as his grandmother, not as an inconvenient elderly relative to be cast aside. Fine, Amanda snapped. You can come to the wedding. Is that all? No, I said firmly. I want to review the wedding budget and approve how the trust funds are being spent. The trust was created to help Jason, not to fulfill your fantasies of grandeur. Amanda hung up without responding, but I knew this was far from over. The next day, both Amanda and Thomas showed up at my house unannounced. Thomas tried to play the role of mediator, though his barely concealed anger was evident in the tight set of his jaw. Eileen, we need to discuss this situation rationally, he began. The wedding is less than 3 weeks away. Vendors need to be paid, arrangements confirmed. I am happy to discuss it rationally, I replied, gesturing for them to sit down in my living room. In fact, I have prepared a revised budget that I believe is generous while still being reasonable. I handed them a folder containing the documents Margaret and I had prepared. Amanda refused to even look at it. This is humiliating, she hissed. You are treating us like children who cannot be trusted with money. You have demonstrated that you cannot be trusted with this particular money, I pointed out. It was not given without conditions or oversight. The discussion went in circles, with Thomas occasionally trying to steer it toward a compromise, while Amanda vacillated between anger and emotional manipulation. Jason will be devastated if his wedding has to be scaled back, she argued, tears welling in her eyes. Is that true? I asked. Or will he be more devastated to learn how his parents tried to take advantage of his grandmother's generosity? That struck a nerve. Amanda and Thomas exchanged a glance that told me they had not considered that Jason might side with me in this conflict. After they left, still without a resolution, I received an unexpected visitor. Jason himself arrived at my doorstep looking troubled and conflicted. Grams, he said as I opened the door. Can we talk? My heart ached at the sight of him. Despite everything, he was still my beloved grandson. Of course, Jason. Come in. We sat in the kitchen where I had taught him to make pancakes all those years ago. He looked around, perhaps remembering those simpler times too. Mum says there is a problem with the trust fund, he began hesitantly. There is a problem with how your parents plan to use the trust fund, I corrected gently. Jason, did you know they told me I was not invited to your wedding because Lily's family did not want elderly guests? His eyes widened in shock. What? No, that is not true at all. Mum told me you had declined the invitation because you were not feeling well enough to travel. That revelation, while not entirely surprising given what I had learned, still felt like a fresh wound. I see, I said quietly. Jason, I need to ask you something important. Do you want the kind of wedding your parents are planning? The imported flowers, the crystal gifts for guests, the private island honeymoon? Jason looked down at his hands. It all got out of control so fast, he admitted. When we first got engaged, Lily and I talked about a simple ceremony by the lake, maybe 50 guests at most. But then Mum and Dad started talking to wedding planners, and suddenly it was this huge production. He looked up at me, his eyes troubled. I did not know how to say no without seeming ungrateful, and they kept saying the trust fund was meant for exactly this kind of thing. I reached across the table and took his hand. The trust fund is meant to help you build your life with Lily, not to fund an extravaganza that neither of you even wanted in the first place. I am so sorry, Grams, Jason said, his voice breaking. I should have stood up to them. I should have insisted you be there. It is my wedding after all. Yes, I agreed softly. It is your wedding, not your mother's social event of the season. We talked for over 2 hours. I explained exactly what the trust had been established, for what conditions had been attached to it, and how his parents had tried to circumvent those conditions. Jason was horrified, especially when I showed him some of the evidence I had gathered. I had no idea they were planning to buy a beach house with the trust money, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. They told me the extra funds were for investment opportunities for Lily and me. As Jason was leaving, he hugged me tightly. I am going to fix this, Grams. I promise. You will be at my wedding, and it will be the kind of celebration Lily and I actually want. I believed him, but I also knew that standing up to Amanda would not be easy for him. She had a way of bending people to her will, a talent she had honed over years of legal practice. My final visitor that week was perhaps the most unexpected. Sophia Lily's mother arrived with a bouquet of fresh flowers and a determined expression. Eileen, she said warmly as I invited her in. Lily and I have been talking. We want you to know that we never ever suggested you should not be at the wedding. In fact, we have been looking forward to having you there. Lily considers you family already. Her candor was refreshing after so much deception. We talked openly about what had happened, and Sophia was appalled by Amanda's manipulation. The wedding has become something neither of our children wanted, she confided. Edward and I have been concerned about the escalating costs and extravagance, but Amanda assured us it was all within budget and what Jason wanted. By the end of our conversation, we had formed an unexpected alliance. Sophia promised to speak with her daughter while I would continue my discussions with Jason. Together, perhaps we could reclaim the wedding from Amanda's controlling grip and return it to what it should be, a celebration of Jason and Lily's love, surrounded by the people who truly cared about them. As Sophia was leaving, she paused at the door. You know, she said thoughtfully, in all this mess, I think there is an opportunity for something good to emerge. Jason is learning to stand up for himself, and Lily is seeing clearly the family dynamics she is marrying into. These are valuable lessons, even if the circumstances are painful. I nodded, finding wisdom and comfort in her words. I hope you are right, Sophia. I truly do. After she left, I sat alone in my living room, reflecting on the events of the past week. The hurt was still there, but it had been joined by something else, a sense of purpose and clarity. This was not just about a wedding invitation anymore. It was about honesty, respect, and standing up for what was right. The path ahead would not be easy, but for the first time since this ordeal began, I felt a glimmer of hope that something positive might emerge from all this pain and deception. As the wedding date drew closer, I made a decision that surprised even myself. I would attend Jason and Lily's wedding, regardless of whether Amanda officially allowed it or not. This was not about defiance or revenge, but about being present for my grandson on one of the most important days of his life. Margaret, ever my loyal friend and advisor, supported my decision wholeheartedly. "You have every right to be there, Eileen," she assured me over lunch at our favorite cafe. "Jason wants you there, Lily wants you there, and even Sophia has made it clear you are welcome." "But what about Amanda?" I asked, still concerned about causing a scene that would detract from Jason and Lily's special day. "She will be furious if I show up without her explicit permission." Margaret fixed me with a stern look. "Since when do you need Amanda's permission to love and support your grandson? You raised that boy as much as she did. Your place is at his wedding period." With Margaret's encouragement, I began to formulate a plan. Rather than confronting Amanda directly, I would work with Sophia, Lily, and Jason to ensure my presence would be as seamless and drama-free as possible. My first step was to meet with Jason and Lily together. They came to my house on a Sunday afternoon, both looking nervous but determined. "Grams," Jason began as we sat in my sunroom, "I want to formally invite you to our wedding. Not just the ceremony, but all of it. The rehearsal dinner, the reception, everything." Lily reached across and took my hand. "We both want you there. It would not be right without you." I was touched by their sincerity, but still concerned about the potential conflict. "What about your mother, Jason? I do not want to create a situation that will ruin your day." Jason's expression hardened slightly. "Mom will have to accept it. I have already told her that this is non-negotiable. You will be at my wedding seated in the front row where a grandmother belongs." "And the trust fund situation?" I asked gently. "Has there been any resolution there?" Jason and Lily exchanged a glance before Lily spoke. "We have actually made some changes to the wedding plans," she explained. "Scaled things back to what we originally wanted before everything got so out of control. A ceremony by the lake dinner and dancing under the stars, just the people we truly care about." "My parents are not happy about it," Jason admitted. "But it is our wedding, not theirs. And honestly, Grams, we are relieved. The pressure of this huge production was making us both miserable." I felt a surge of pride in both of them. Standing up to Amanda was no small feat, and they were doing it with grace and maturity. "I think that sounds absolutely perfect," I told them sincerely. "A celebration of your love, not a spectacle for others." After they left, I received an unexpected text from Lily. "Thank you for teaching Jason the value of standing up for what is right. I am lucky to be joining a family with your strength in its DNA." Her words moved me deeply. Perhaps some good was indeed coming from this painful situation. The next phase of my plan involved a shopping trip with Sophia. She had suggested we find our wedding outfits together, a gesture of solidarity that I appreciated more than she could know. "I am thinking blue for both of us," Sophia said, as we browsed through an upscale boutique. "Not matching, of course, but complementary shades that will look beautiful in the photographs." I tried on a silk dress in a deep sapphire blue that Margaret insisted took 20 years off my age. Sophia found a lighter blue gown with delicate beading that suited her perfectly. "We will be the most elegant mothers/grandmothers at the wedding," Sophia declared with a wink. "Amanda will be green with envy." While our shopping expedition was light-hearted, Sophia did share some concerning news. "Amanda has been making calls trying to convince family members and friends to take her side in this conflict," she told me as we had lunch afterward. "Fortunately, most people see through her manipulation." I sighed, saddened but not surprised by Amanda's tactics. She has always been determined to get her way, even as a child. I had hoped she would outgrow it, but instead she just became more sophisticated in her methods. "Well, she has met her match in you," Sophia said with admiration. "And in Lily too, I might add. My daughter may look sweet, but she has a backbone of steel." The night before the wedding, I sat down and wrote a letter to Amanda. Not an angry letter, or an accusatory one, but a mother's honest expression of hurt disappointment and enduring love. Amanda. I wrote, "Tomorrow I will watch your son marry the woman he loves. I will sit in the front row not to spite you or to assert some kind of victory, but because that is where a grandmother belongs. I am deeply saddened by the deception and manipulation that led to this point, but I want you to know that my heart remains open to healing and reconciliation when you are ready. The trust fund was never about control or power. It was and is about love and support for Jason's future. I hope someday you can see that. With enduring love despite everything, Mum." I sealed the letter in an envelope and placed it on my bedside table. I would give it to Amanda after the wedding, when emotions had hopefully settled somewhat. As I prepared for bed, I looked at the photograph of Walter that I kept by my bed. "I wish you were here for this," I told his smiling image. "You always knew how to handle Amanda better than I did." I could almost hear his gentle laugh, his wise voice reminding me that our daughter had always needed firm boundaries and clear consequences. Walter had never been afraid to stand his ground with Amanda, even when it made him temporarily unpopular with her. Drawing strength from his memory, I went to sleep that night feeling prepared for whatever the wedding day might bring. My outfit was ready, my gift for the couple wrapped, and my heart, though still bruised, was open to the possibility of joy. The most important lesson I had learned through this ordeal was that standing up for myself did not make me selfish or unkind. It made me a woman of principle, someone who could not be manipulated or taken advantage of. And that was a legacy worth passing on to Jason and his future children. The morning of Jason and Lily's wedding dawned with perfect blue skies and a gentle breeze, nature's gift to the young couple. I awoke early, my stomach fluttering with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Margaret had offered to accompany me for moral support, and she arrived at my house precisely at 9, dressed elegantly and bearing fresh croissants from our favourite bakery. "Ready for battle?" she asked with a wry smile as she handed me a coffee. "I am hoping it will not come to that." I replied, though I appreciated her warrior spirit. "Today is about Jason and Lily, not about the family drama." Margaret helped me with the final touches of my outfit, a task that reminded me of how Walter used to zip up my dresses for special occasions, his gentle hands, and the kiss he would always place on the nape of my neck afterward. The memory brought a bittersweet smile to my face. "Walter would be proud of you," Margaret said as if reading my thoughts. "Standing your ground, protecting what matters." We arrived at the lake venue early as planned. Jason had texted me the night before, suggesting I come before the main rush of guests to avoid any potentially awkward confrontations in the parking lot or entrance. He was waiting for me at the side entrance, handsome in his tailored suit, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Grams," he said, embracing me warmly. "You look beautiful. And you look exactly like your grandfather on our wedding day." I told him, my voice thick with emotion. "He would be so proud of the man you have become." Jason introduced me to Lily's father, Edward, a kind-faced man with Lily's same warm eyes. "Mrs. Montgomery," he said, taking my hand in both of his. "Lily has told me so much about you. We are honored to have you here today." His sincere welcome brought tears to my eyes. How strange that my own daughter had tried to exclude me while these people who had no obligation to me were making me feel so valued and included. As Jason led me to my seat in the front row, I caught sight of Amanda and Thomas entering from the main entrance. Amanda froze when she saw me, her face cycling through several emotions, ending on a tight, controlled expression that I recognized as her courtroom face. Thomas put a restraining hand on her arm as she seemed about to march over to where I sat. They exchanged words, and though I could not hear them, it was clear Thomas was counseling restraint. Finally, Amanda nodded stiffly and allowed him to guide her to the opposite side of the seating area. The ceremony itself was everything a wedding should be: intimate and meaningful. Lily was radiant as she walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her simple but elegant dress catching the sunlight. Jason's face, as he watched her approach, was a portrait of pure love and wonder. Their vows were personal and heartfelt. Jason included a line that brought fresh tears to my eyes. I promise to value family the way my grandmother taught me to stand up for what is right and to always lead with love and honesty. After the ceremony, as guests mingled during the cocktail hour before the reception, I kept to the edges of the gathering, not wanting to provoke a confrontation with Amanda. Sophia found me there and linked her arm through mine. "No hiding in the corners," she said firmly. "You are the grandmother of the groom. Your place is right in the center of this celebration." With Sophia's support, I joined the main group, accepting congratulations and well wishes from guests who seemed genuinely pleased to see me. A few gave me curious looks, perhaps having heard rumors of the family conflict, but most were simply warm and welcoming. The moment of confrontation I had been dreading came just before dinner. Amanda approached me as I was speaking with one of Jason's college friends, her eyes cold and her posture rigid. "Mother," she said tightly, "I see you decided to insert yourself into the proceedings despite our discussion." Before I could respond, Jason appeared at my side as if by magic. "Mum," he said, his voice pleasant but firm, "Grams is here as my honored guest. Today is not the day for whatever issues you are working through." Amanda looked taken aback by her son's direct approach. "Jason, you do not understand the situation fully," she began. "I understand it perfectly," Jason cut in, still keeping his voice down to avoid drawing attention. "I know about the trust fund, the beach house plans, all of it. And while we will need to address that as a family, today is my wedding day. Today we celebrate and we treat each other with respect. Can you do that for me?" The appeal to make this about his happiness rather than our conflict was masterful. Amanda hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Of course, for you, Jason." As she walked away, Jason squeezed my hand. "She will come around eventually, Grams. She is just not used to not getting her way." "Thank you for standing up for me," I told him. "I know how difficult that was." "Actually," he said with a small smile, "it gets easier each time. There is something liberating about setting boundaries even with your parents." The dinner and reception that followed were joyful and relaxed, exactly the celebration Jason and Lily had originally wanted before Amanda's grandiose plans took over. Under a canopy of twinkling lights by the lake, with simple but elegant decorations and delicious locally sourced food, guests laughed, danced, and celebrated the young couple. The most unexpected moment came during the speeches. After the best man and maid of honor had spoken, Jason stood up and asked for everyone's attention. "Before we continue the celebration, there is someone I want to acknowledge," he said, his voice carrying across the now quiet gathering. "My grandmother, Eileen Montgomery." All eyes turned to me, and I felt a flush creeping up my cheeks. "Many of you know that Grams was as much a parent to me as my mum and dad," Jason continued. "When they were building their careers, she was the one making my lunches, attending my school plays, teaching me to fish and cook and respect others. She was the one who showed me what unconditional love looks like." He raised his glass in my direction. "Grams, thank you for being here today, for being a moral compass in my life, and for teaching me that standing up for what is right is always worth it, even when it is difficult. I love you." Tears streamed down my face as the guests joined in the toast. Across the room I caught Amanda's eye. For just a moment, the hardness in her expression softened, and I saw a flicker of something, perhaps recognition, perhaps regret. After the cake cutting and first dance, I found myself alone for a moment on the deck overlooking the lake. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of gold and pink. I felt a presence beside me and turned to find Lily. "Is this spot taken?" she asked with a warm smile. "Not at all," I replied, making room for her at the railing. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sunset. Then Lily spoke, her voice soft but determined. "I want you to know that Jason and I have decided to postpone the honeymoon Amanda planned. We are going to your lake house instead, if that is all right with you." I turned to her in surprise. "The lake house? But I thought you had reservations at that island resort." That was never our choice, Lily explained. We wanted something simple and meaningful. Jason has been telling me for years about summers at your lake house, how peaceful and beautiful it is there. That sounds like the perfect place to begin our married life together. I was deeply touched by their decision. The house is yours to use for as long as you like, I told her. Walter and I always dreamed of it being a place for family gatherings and happy memories. Lily hesitated, then added, "There is one more thing. Jason and I have been talking, and we want to revisit the terms of the trust fund. We appreciate your generosity more than we can say, but we want to build our life together on our own terms with our own efforts. We would like to suggest that the trust be reserved for future needs, like education for our children, or perhaps healthcare, if that ever becomes necessary." Her maturity and integrity brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Lily, you are a remarkable young woman, and I am honored to welcome you into our family. Jason is very fortunate." She smiled and leaned in to kiss my cheek. "I am the fortunate one. Not many people marry into a family with such a strong, wise matriarch." As the reception wound down, I prepared to leave feeling a deep sense of peace, despite the lingering tension with Amanda. This day had reaffirmed my faith in the next generation, in Jason and Lily's ability to navigate life with integrity and courage. Margaret, who had kept a watchful eye on me throughout the event, joined me as I gathered my things. "Mission accomplished," she said with satisfaction. "You were here, you maintained your dignity, and you did not throttle Amanda, which frankly deserves a medal in itself." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. It was a beautiful wedding, was not it simple and genuine, just like Jason and Lily? As we headed toward the exit, I was surprised to see Amanda approaching us alone this time. She hesitated, then spoke in a subdued voice. "Mother, may I walk you to your car?" Margaret raised an eyebrow at me, silently asking if I wanted her to stay. I shook my head slightly. "I will be fine, Margaret. I will call you tomorrow." As Amanda and I walked slowly toward the parking area, an awkward silence hung between us. Finally, she spoke. "Jason seems very happy." "Yes, he does," I agreed. "He and Lily make a wonderful couple." Another silence. Then Amanda said, "I owe you an apology, Mother. What we did, the lies about the wedding invitation, the plans for the trust fund. It was wrong. I got caught up in it, all the status of a lavish wedding, the beach house, and I lost sight of what really matters." Her apology, though halting and somewhat self-justifying, was still an apology. "Thank you for saying that, Amanda," I replied. "It means a great deal to me." "I am not saying everything is resolved," she added quickly. "I still think you overreacted by freezing the trust, but I should not have lied to you or to Jason. It was not a complete capitulation, but it was a start." "Perhaps we can begin again with honesty this time," I suggested. "The trust was always meant to help Jason, not to be a blank check for whatever anyone wanted." Amanda nodded reluctantly. "Jason has already told us he wants to scale back the trust provisions, save it for his children's education and such." She sounded disappointed, but resigned. "I suppose he is an adult, and it is his decision." "He is an adult," I agreed, "and a thoughtful, principled one at that. You and Thomas raised a good man, Amanda. With some help from his Grams, of course," I added with a small smile. We had reached my car, and I turned to face my daughter fully. In the fading light, I could see traces of the little girl she had once been, stubborn and determined, but also capable of great love and loyalty when she chose to be. "The door is always open, Amanda," I told her softly. "Whenever you are ready to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect and honesty, I will be here." She did not respond directly, but nodded and stepped back as I got into the car. As Margaret drove us away from the venue, I reflected on the day, its triumphs and challenges, the healing that had begun, and the work that still lay ahead. The trust fund would remain frozen for now, with new provisions to be discussed and agreed upon by all involved. The beach house plans had been abandoned, but more importantly, the deception had been brought to light and acknowledged. It was a beginning, a small step toward repairing what had been broken. As we drove through the quiet evening streets, I realized that in standing up for myself, I had not only protected my financial assets, but also my self-respect and dignity. And perhaps in doing so, I had taught my family an important lesson about honesty, integrity, and the true meaning of generosity. It has been 6 months since Jason and Lily's wedding. The changes in our family dynamic have been significant, some challenging, others surprisingly positive. The journey of healing and rebuilding relationships has been neither quick nor easy, but it has been worth every difficult conversation and uncomfortable moment. The first few weeks after the wedding were tense. Amanda and Thomas kept their distance, still nursing their wounded pride and adjusting to the new reality of the trust fund situation. Jason and Lily returned from their week at the lake house, refreshed and happy, their bond strengthened by the quiet time away from family drama. My relationship with Jason and Lily blossomed. They began a tradition of Sunday dinners at my house, sometimes bringing friends, sometimes just the three of us enjoying simple meals and conversation. Lily asked me to teach her some of my recipes, particularly the apple pie that Jason had always loved, and those cooking sessions became precious times of connection and laughter. "You know, Eileen," Lily said one afternoon as we kneaded dough together, "when Jason first told me about all the drama with the trust fund and the wedding invitation, I was horrified. But now I almost think it was a blessing in disguise." "How so?" I asked, curious about her perspective. "It forced everything into the open," she explained. "All the unspoken tensions, the patterns of manipulation, the lack of boundaries. It was painful, but necessary, like lancing a wound to allow it to heal properly." Her wisdom impressed me once again. "You are right," I agreed. "These issues might have festered indefinitely, otherwise poisoning relationships beneath the surface." The first significant step toward reconciliation with Amanda came unexpectedly about 2 months after the wedding. She called me on a Tuesday evening, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Mother, I have been seeing a therapist," she began, the admission clearly difficult for her. "She has helped me see some patterns in my behavior, particularly around control and entitlement." I remained silent, giving her space to continue. "I am not saying I have had some miraculous transformation," Amanda clarified quickly, "but I am trying to understand why I did what I did, why I thought it was acceptable to lie to you and manipulate Jason." It was the most honest conversation we had had in years. I expressed my own regrets, acknowledging that perhaps I had enabled some of her controlling tendencies by too often giving in to keep the peace. After that initial conversation, Amanda and I began meeting for coffee every other week. Our discussions were sometimes strained, occasionally punctuated by old defensiveness or hurt. But gradually, a new kind of relationship began to emerge, one based on mutual respect rather than obligation or manipulation. Thomas was slower to come around. His pride had been deeply wounded, and he struggled to acknowledge his role in the deception. But a breakthrough came when Jason asked him to collaborate on a project for his sustainable business consulting firm. "Dad has expertise we can use," Jason explained to me over dinner. "And I think working together professionally might help rebuild our personal relationship too." He was right. The project gave Thomas a way to contribute positively, to be valued for his knowledge rather than his ability to manipulate situations. It also gave father and son time to talk, to begin healing the breach of trust between them. 3 months after the wedding, we all gathered at my house for Thanksgiving. The atmosphere was cautiously optimistic, with everyone making an effort to focus on gratitude and new beginnings. Sophia and Edward joined us, their warm presence helping to ease lingering tensions. During dessert, Amanda cleared her throat nervously. "I have an announcement," she said. All conversation stopped as we turned to her expectantly. "Thomas and I have decided to sell our house. We are downsizing to a smaller place, something more practical for just the two of us. And," she hesitated, then continued with determination, "we want to contribute a portion of the proceeds to Jason and Lily's Environmental Education Foundation." The announcement was met with stunned silence. Then Jason reached across the table and squeezed his mother's hand. "Thank you, Mom. That means a lot." It was a tangible sign of change of Amanda and Thomas reconsidering their priorities and choices. Not a complete transformation, but a meaningful step in a new direction. As for the trust fund, we eventually reached a compromise that everyone could accept. The majority of the funds were reserved for education, healthcare, and legitimate business ventures. A smaller portion was made available for quality of life improvements and special occasions, but with transparent oversight and mutual agreement. The money was never the real issue anyway. Jason told me when we finalized the new arrangement. It was about honesty and respect, about recognizing that generosity comes with responsibility, not entitlement. My proudest moment came just last week when Lily called with news that she was pregnant. Their first child, my first great-grandchild, would arrive in the summer. "We want you to help us set up the nursery, Grams," Jason said when they came to tell me in person. "No one else would do such a perfect job." As I reflect on the past 6 months, I am filled with a sense of peace and cautious optimism. The hurt has not completely disappeared, the trust not fully restored, but we are moving forward with greater awareness and intention. The lesson I have learned through all of this is that standing up for yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. Setting boundaries requiring honesty, expecting respect. These are not unreasonable demands. They are the foundation of healthy relationships. In protecting my own dignity and self-respect, I ultimately helped my entire family recognize and address destructive patterns that had gone unchallenged for too long. Walter would be proud, I think, not just of my standing firm, but of how our family is finding its way back to what really matters: truth, respect, and love, freely given rather than manipulated or coerced. And to all of you watching who might be facing your own family challenges, your own difficult decisions about where to draw the line between generosity and self-protection, I want you to remember this. Your worth is not measured by what you give or what you tolerate. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is to say no to deception and manipulation, even when it comes from those you love most. Have you ever had to make a difficult stand against family members who took advantage of your generosity? How did you navigate those troubled waters? Share your experiences in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe for more stories of resilience and growth through life's challenges. Thank you for watching, and remember, it is never too late to reclaim your dignity and reshape family dynamics with truth and self-respect at the center.